Okay, I want to make something perfectly clear. I went into this wanting to like it. No, really, I did. Despite the fact that it's based on a Stephen King novel, which Stephen King is never an author that I have particularly cared for. I like very few of the movies that have been based on his work. But this show, Under the Dome, had a pretty good cast. It was a TV show, and I thought, well, maybe giving someone else a certain amount of creative control, i.e., the showrunners, and maybe different episodic writers, would make something very interesting out of this. I mean, the premise was interesting. The premise of Under the Dome is exactly what it sounds like. This town in Maine, I think. Imagine a Stephen King story in Maine. Chester's Mill is all of a sudden cut off from the rest of the world when this dome of some kind, we don't really know what the dome is made of, but this dome comes down around the town, completely cutting them off from the outside world. There's no way in, there's no way out. But this dome seems to have a mind of its own, and the rules are constantly changing, and paranoia starts to set in, and people start to lose their minds. I mean, it lays the groundwork for what could potentially be an interesting series of interactions between well-written characters. What we got was, honestly, a show that really had no business making it past the first season just based on merit. Because, let me tell you, this show sucks. Oh my god, it sucks. And before I get any negative comments, please be aware that this is a matter of opinion. Okay, I am giving my perspective, my own individual perspective on this show. Okay? Please don't vote this video down just because you disagree with my opinion. Okay? I apologize if I'm going to alienate or piss off any fans of this show or any fans of Stephen King. All I can really do is give my own perspective. Okay, and a lot of the time I'm sure I'm not breaking any new ground by saying this. A lot of the time people really seem to get offended when something that they hold very something that they hold in very high esteem is criticized in what they deem to be an unfair fashion. Well, that being said, it is my opinion that this show is honestly one of the... Okay. First of all, the first season I was not impressed with in the slightest. The first season was awful. Okay, and last night I just got around to watching the first episode of the second season because I was willing to give this show another chance. I mean, I watched the first season and I really didn't like it, but then I said, well, maybe it's just one of those cases where they really needed to iron out the kinks. I mean, a lot of the time, even in the best TV shows, the first season is really a time when they undergo a lot of trial and error and find out what works about the show, what doesn't work about the show. And the second season is where things really start to kick off, okay? So I was willing to one last time give this show the benefit of the doubt and watch the first episode of the second season, okay? And yeah, I just want it to be known that I'm done. I am done watching this show. I'm not going to waste my time with it anymore. It's just one of those things where if I am not looking forward to the next episode of a show, then really, what's the point of me even watching the show? I mean, sometimes there are certain TV shows that I have watched in the past that have gone down, down, down in quality. That I've, and I'm sure I'm not alone in saying this, that I've just kind of kept watching out of some obligation, thinking maybe they can improve. It was Two and a Half Men for me. Two and a Half Men, I liked watching back in the day. But recently, ever since they introduced, well, even before they introduced Ashton Kutcher, Two and a Half Men was really starting to go downhill. It was really starting to wind down in quality. And recently I stopped watching that as well. I did a video on why I didn't really feel the show was up to par. But at least I have to give this to Two and a Half Men. Even the worst episodes, did not take away the fact that Two and a Half Men used to be funny. In my opinion, Under the Dome has never been entertaining. And I will explain why. First of all, the acting is not very good. Okay? And this actually perplexes me because, again, they have some serious talent in terms of the actors that they roped into this. Really, the only two actors who come out of this relatively unscathed are Mike Vogel and Rochelle Lefevre as Barbie and Julia. And Barbie is Mike Vogel's character. His full name is Dale Barbara, which begs the question, why do they take the least unlikable character on the show and completely take away any semblance of masculinity by nicknaming him Barbie? Why does the character go by Barbie? It's about as embarrassing as people calling Anakin Skywalker Annie, if not worse. But those two, they're not exactly the most interesting characters on the block. But in terms of likability or lack thereof, they are probably the most tolerable. Because they are the least uninteresting and the least unlikable, okay? Okay, because Barbie, even though he may be bland at times, and Julia, even though she may be bland at times, I can still see them existing in the real world. I can still buy these people as characters that I wouldn't mind sharing I wouldn't mind spending an hour or two with. All of the other characters on the show, literally every single one of the other characters on the show, I do not want to be around. Barbie and Julia, sure. Barbie and Julia, they're not obnoxious, and they're probably the two actors, Rochelle Lefevre and Mike Vogel. This may just be a testament to their talent. They're somehow able to work through the terrible writing to produce characters that I hate significantly less than everyone else. Again, maybe it's just the way that their characters are written, I don't know. But, another talented actor that they got here is Dean Norris from Breaking Bad. And he also, I think, had a cameo in Get the Gringo, but that's beside the point. Dean Norris has proven that he can act before. And watching this show, you wouldn't really guess that. This material is completely beneath him. He plays this character called Big Jim. I know, another stupid name. Another stupid nickname. Big Jim, he's this grumpy old what the hell is he? I mean, I'm trying to remember his profession. But he plays this guy who is constantly trying to use the dome and the confinement and the fear and the paranoia going around to try and kind of point himself as the de facto leader of the town. He says, this town needs a leader, blah, 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 blah. and he's willing to kill anyone in his way. He's willing to. He has no hesitation about killing anyone, except maybe his son, although that's questionable. But Big Jim, they try and make it so that this is a somewhat sympathetic character. They try and make his motivations understandable, because his wife walked out on him and his son, and he's had to raise his son all by himself. But they don't really do a good job of tying that in with his desire for leadership, his desire for control. So a lot of the time when he is trying to enact his evil plans, he just comes off as really one-dimensional, because we don't really see how his past ties into what he's doing now. Okay, so yeah, again, a lot of the time he's just kind of mustache-twirlingly evil. He is honestly one of the most inconsistent characters on the show, because sometimes he's not all that bad, and then sometimes he's just Satan. Okay, so he's not very good in this. I mean, Dean Norris, at all times, he just has this furrowed Cro-Magnon brow. It's almost like he's angry that he's being given this material. He just always looks angry. Whereas in Breaking Bad, that was an actual character he was playing. I mean, the cop that he was playing, that was an actual character. He had depth. I mean, yeah, he was a significantly less intense character, but I'm not going to compare the show to Breaking Bad. There's no contest. But Natalie Martinez plays this cop chick named Linda, and she is probably the most incompetent cop, or one of the most incompetent cops in recent television memory, because she always does what she is told. She is completely spineless. And Natalie Martinez, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to have her be this kind of underdog. They're trying to do what Allison Tolman's character turned out to be in Fargo, TV's Fargo, where this kind of unexpectedly heroic character steps up. But again, she is so weak-willed, and Natalie Martinez plays her as just this spineless yes person, that whenever she does step up, it just feels very sporadic. Let's see, and the younger actors don't really do that much better. I mean, Colin Ford and Mackenzie Lintz are, first of all, they have, it seems like they're trying to go for this very Spielbergian child actor sort of thing. It's kind of like it seems like the writers of the show want these two characters to be like the kids from E.T. Except the problem is they make them these little Sherlock Holmes people. They make them these little Sherlock Holmes clones. I mean, they just make this. They make this the Colin Ford character like Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. I mean, he's just figuring out these concepts that should be well above his level of intelligence. I mean, he's supposed to be in either middle school or high school. I forget which one. But they're not really given much personality outside of, being the only people to actually try and figure out what supernatural origin this dome has, or what scientific origin this dome has. So they're not very good, although with them I can at least understand that they are making the most of the material given to them. They're not nearly as unlikable as they could be if these roles were given to lesser, younger actors, especially in Colin Ford's case, because, he doesn't really strike me as a completely talentless younger actor. Who does strike me as completely talentless is Alexander Koch, or Koch, or whatever, however you say his last name. The kid who plays Big Jim Jr. Okay, he's oh my god, he is such a bad actor. Um, he is by, and here's the thing, it's not just the writing. Okay, in the case of Dean Norris and Natalie Martinez and guys like that, you really get the sense that this is that the showrunners, the writers are giving terrible material to to um to otherwise talented actors, and those actors really don't really have a whole lot of wriggle room. Okay, but in the case of Junior, you are giving just lousy material to a horrible actor. I mean, this kid cannot act his way out of a paper bag. If he was starving on the street, he he would not be able to act to get some food. Because here's the thing: every single line out of his mouth is this very boring monotone, and the way that his character is written, it's your typical Stephen King crazy character who is completely devoid of interest. And I am sorry if I am alienating any Stephen King fans in the audience, but it's the villain, it's the bully from It, it's the crazy Bronson Pinchot character from the Langoliers. Okay, it's your typical Stephen King cliched archetype where this person, this kid who is just completely twisted beyond any realm of believability. And I know there are twisted people out there, obviously, but this kid, he's not written very interestingly because again, they're trying to do a similar thing they did with Big Jim, in that his mom walked out on him, but we never see that. We never see how that really affects him. We're just kind of told that this void exists. We are told that this kid is messed up in the head from childhood trauma. We are told that he has a turbulent relationship with his dad. Instead of being shown what we are, what we are shown is this kid, is this Junior guy, speak almost every line in this very boring monotone, and not since Kristen Stewart have I seen a more irritating mouth breather of an actor. And at least to Kristen Stewart's credit, you can tell that there was a pulse. Okay, it was a pulse to a very annoying character a lot of the time, particularly in the Twilight movies. But with Junior, he just looks like a moron half the time. I mean, he leaves his mouth hanging open after saying a lot of his lines. He's like, it's like the dome's making you sick. No, Angie, I have to take care of you. My dad is a liar. There were so many points where I just wanted to smack this kid in the head and say, close your goddamn mouth. Close your mouth, please. It is irritating. You look like an idiot. And again, it's not just one of these things where I'm nitpicking this guy's mannerisms or anything. It's just that he is giving such a terrible performance. He really has. It seems like he really has no concept of how a normal person would say lines. He seems to have no understanding of drama or I don't know, giving an actual charismatic performance. And the character is not supposed to be charismatic. I understand that. He's supposed to be a little messed up, but even then I could not buy, because he speaks every line with that stupid monotone. Oh my god, he is a terrible actor, and I hope he never progresses to anything beyond this. good God, I hope he does not go on to do anything else. And Britt Robertson's not much better. I mean, she spends the first several episodes just screaming her head off. Not really the ingredients for a very strong episode, or for a very strong character, excuse me. And the other time, whenever she is supposed to be this strong character, whenever she's supposed to be angry at some other character, she just comes off as petulant. She just comes off as this kid not really getting what she wants out of her mommy. So yeah, the characters are not very interesting. I don't know. Maybe Jeff Fahey could have been likable if they hadn't killed him off in the first episode. Maybe. I don't know, but the dialogue is just so awful in this show, and the storylines are just so random. The storylines seem to have no concept of escalation, of dramatic escalation. What a climax should be in comparison to what a rising action should be. Okay, if you can hear that, that's the air conditioning. But I'll give you an example. In season 1, I think the 4th or 5th episode, I think, is where the military outside the dome, in an effort to kind of destroy this supernatural anomaly, they resort to using a nuke to try and destroy the dome, and it's supposed to be this really heart-wrenching scene where all the townspeople are gathered in this nuclear fallout shelter. I think they're underground, basically, and it's supposed to be this very like, oh god, this is the end, isn't it? But here's the problem: it's like episode 4 or 5 out of a season that is, I don't know, 13 episodes, maybe, I don't know. But you see the problem here. And the end of the season is Barbie. I'm not calling him Barbie, I'm just going to call him Dale. The end of the season is Dale getting framed for a murder by Big Jim. Don't you think the nuke and the potential death of everyone involved in the show should have been saved for the end of the season? Maybe? Instead, you blew your load too early. You took this very potentially cataclysmic event to this entire society, and you wasted it too early. And at the end of the season, you were left with this very predictable storyline about oh, this guy is a murderer, blah, blah, blah. And it's just this big misunderstanding. There are characters who look stupid for thinking that he is a murderer, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, the storylines are just really random like that. The townspeople don't really seem all that concerned a lot of the time with being stuck under the dome. A lot of them just go to the diner like normal. I understand that there's not really a whole lot you can do, but how about a bit more in the way of growing paranoia? That's one of the things I was actually looking forward to in this show. How about a little more in the way of concern? How about a little more in the way of when are we going to get out of here? Or who appointed you king? Or blah, blah, blah. They kind of start to go into that area at points, but then immediately they ruin it by going into some ridiculous other storyline involving Natalie Z's character starting this fight club. What? And the dialogue is so bad. I already said that, but the dialogue is so bad a lot of the time, especially when they're trying to figure out what the dome is. Like, oh, the dome is talking to us. Oh my god, the monarch will be crowned, blah, blah, blah. And those aren't the only instances of bad dialogue. A lot of bad dialogue does come from Big Jim and Junior. But, there is not a single actor spared a bad line in this. Again, probably the least amount of dialogue offenses come from Mike Vogel and Rochelle Lefevre's characters. And ironically enough, Rochelle Lefevre has worked with lackluster material before. I'm sure all of these actors have, but Rochelle Lefevre is probably the one from the most recent memory because she was in the first two Twilight movies. But yeah, also this show really seems to have no concept of character motivations, because several characters just kind of switch sides, switch allegiances for the convenience of whatever episodic plot is going on at the time. I cannot tell you how many instances there were of Junior and Angie kind of reconciling, but kind of in this alliance of convenience, while kind of enemies, while Junior was kind of crazy and kidnapping her. I mean, it borders on Stockholm Syndrome. It really does. I mean, the show is trying to market this, or was for a while trying to market this relationship between these two characters, and I said, no, it is disturbing. It's not charming, and it's not something to be hopeful about. It's disturbing because he freaking kidnapped her and held her for days in his dad's shelter. He is messed up, and that is one of the many reasons that he should be killed off. And recently the show, actually no, I'll get to that later, but another point that kind of irks me is, no, like I said, the characters switch sides and switch allegiances for the convenience of the plot. Big Jim is sometimes a bad guy, sometimes he's kind of allied with the good guys, and then he immediately goes back to being a one-dimensional bad guy. And then Linda is kind of siding with Big Jim, but all of a sudden she's kind of siding with Barbie or Dale. It's just a mess. And with the first episode of season 2, the show tried to be kind of edgy by supposedly killing off two main characters, Linda and Angie. But again, these were two characters that were poorly written in the first place that I didn't really like. So when they were killed off, I just said, I don't care. And they were killed off very unceremoniously. I mean, they at least when Game of Thrones does it, they make it an event. When Ned Stark died, they made it big. When Robb Stark died, they made it big. When Tywin Lannister died, when Shay died, Game of Thrones understands the significance of some of these characters. I mean, yeah, a lot of the content on there is pretty deplorable by a lot of people's standards, but Game of Thrones actually has an understanding of character motivations. Game of Thrones actually has an understanding of basic storytelling. Under the Dome does not. Okay, it thinks it does. I mean, with some very overdramatic moments or melodramatic performances, but it just doesn't. Especially with some of the unintentionally hilarious moments on the show, because occasionally, again, resorting to the supernatural cliches that Stephen King seems to think are scary. Like they're like, oh, the dome is talking to us. What's it saying? Oh, look at the little dome in the forest. We have to take it home and hide it in our barn. And it's supposed to be this very, very scary series of scenes where metal objects are flying toward the dome in the season premiere a few days ago. It was supposed to be this big scary scene, except not only was it kind of giving me flashbacks of The Happening when just weird random things were happening like this, especially with people just falling down without so much as a warning, or without so much as a sound. When people just kind of fell down, it was giving me flashbacks to The Happening, which not a good sign. But But also, Barbie he's handcuffed at the time, and his cuffs are flying toward the edge of the dome with every other metal object, and it's this real moment of hilarity. I mean, they try to make it very serious and very scary, but I was laughing, and I was also laughing when the car was flying toward them, and when they killed off Linda that way, I said, "Oh well, I guess that was supposed to be a serious moment. Could have fooled me." And the dome really seems to have no rules. I mean, there really doesn't really seem to be any kind of pattern to this thing, and that's supposed to make it scary. But again, that leads to a lot of unintentionally humorous moments, like when Big Jim or other characters see these kind of ghostly apparitions of dead characters. And these dead characters have this very kind of smart-ass attitude, and are kind of taunting them. And one really funny one was when Big Jim was talking to the Asian chick that he killed at the end of season 1. And he's like, "What are you, the ghost of Christmas future?" and he's arguing back and forth with this apparition. And also, only certain people and certain objects got affected, and only where the main characters were. Okay, I'm just talking about the season premiere. Only certain objects got affected. I mean, the main characters walk into this house, or the main characters run into this house, and all of a sudden everything starts moving in the house. All of a sudden, the main characters go to the center of town, and everyone topples over because of some noise that the dome is emitting. But it never tells us why some characters are seemingly immune to this. It never tells us. I mean, Barbie does not fall over. Julia does not fall over. Why not? Big Jim does not fall over. The only explanation we get for that is because the dome apparently wants him dead the dome apparently wants him to stop killing for some reason. I mean, you really want the killing to stop? How about just go away, you stupid dome? I mean, you're the one who's making everyone all violent here. Big Jim wouldn't be in a position to make this grab at power if you hadn't come down. So really, the dome is really kind of sending some mixed messages here. Yeah, overall, this show is just a colossal train wreck. It has no basic understanding of seasonal storytelling. The dialogue is horrendous a lot of the time. It's poorly acted more often than not. And really, I don't know why I kept with it for so long. Maybe I was just holding out hope that, maybe this can come back. But no, it's another really crappy adaptation of a Stephen King story. I mean, you can chalk it right up there with It, the Tommyknockers, the Langoliers. You can just put it right up there. Oh, and his also really boring Shining miniseries. I'm not talking about the Jack Nicholson Shining, because that was actually kind of good. Okay? The miniseries with Steven Weber was so boring. And oddly enough, that's the one that Stephen King prefers. The really boring version that he wrote, rather than the Nicholson version, which was, I don't know, decent. Alright, that's enough of me ragging on Stephen King. I don't like this show, but if you like this show, feel free to keep watching it. I will just don't ask me to.